So welcome, Simon.
Yeah, cheers, Karen. How you doing?
I'm fantastic. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think when I did see. I think it was about mid-March. Maybe it was about the 10th of March or something like that. I saw you.
I got to Melbourne on the 19th, so it would have been in the first week of March that I went through that sort of Sale, Barnsdale area, I reckon. Yeah, maybe just around the start of March.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And, just so that, I've just done an intro on you and, you're just doing amazing stuff, or you've done amazing stuff. And I'd love to talk about that, about how you're feeling now, but we'll get to that later. But I think that I remember pulling you. I've passed you in Traralgon, a few days later, and you're walking along, and I just looked at you and I thought, man, he's got to be tired. Like walking from Brisbane to Melbourne, it's got to take its toll. And I remember pulling you up on the side of the road near Stratford, and you're just looking at me like, oh Christ, who's this wants to talk to me?
Well, yeah, obviously, yes. You walk from Brisbane to Melbourne, you get tired, but I think adrenaline, like when you came and you just threw that sack over my head and threw me in the back of your car, the adrenaline kicked in, So suddenly, when it's fight or flight, life or death, tiredness just evaporates, you know what I mean? So I was in survival mode when we met, Karen.
So for everybody listening, that's not quite true. There wasn't a bag over his head.
Having a go. Great to be able to get off my feet for a few minutes.
Yeah, but I did pull him into the car because it was absolutely bucketing down. I said, "Come on, Simon, let's do this. Let's do this interview." So you walked from Brisbane to Melbourne. So tell us what that was to raise money and raise awareness and all that kind of stuff. But that was because you had stage 4 cancer. But tell us what your life was like before the cancer diagnosis. Like what was Simon doing, and how was things happening?
Well, it's probably worth going back and having a quick run over the childhood, because a lot of that informs who I was, why I did what I did. Yeah. And even then, when you start telling your own story, you've got this sort of it's about sorrow and overcoming sorrow. And it's about kindness being the antidote to that sorrow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got this sort of way that pain and bad sort of lessons tend to go in these generational cycles. Yeah. So I'd actually wind back to my grandfather very, very quickly. So he was a Frenchman. He collaborated with the Germans in World War II, and he had to escape France, and he could never go back. Yeah. So he was broken by his experiences in the war, and he came to live in Australia, married and had children, 3 children, one of whom was my mother, who was the youngest of the 3. I think the way the war broke him was profound. He was a violent man, a thuggish man. He was I didn't know a lot of this when I was a child. To me, he was this sweet figure who'd play the French accordion and sing songs in a language I couldn't understand that seemed, melancholy. But later I learned that he was really violent. He used his fists on my grandmother a lot. I don't think he ever punched my mother, but he might have interfered with her when she was, a young girl. I don't know, but it was a dark situation, and it darkened my mother's outlook. So she left. She got pregnant when she was 15 years old, and she became addicted to heroin. So this was in the hippie kind of. It was just after Vietnam. It's 1970, and she was just sort of caught up in that, young and naive, I think. So started chasing the dragon, and I think then that becomes a lifelong pursuit. Yeah. So she had been darkened in her upbringing, and she learned a lot of flawed lessons about love, that it's transactional, that she's unworthy of it, etc., etc. And then I'm born, and I have 2 younger brothers as well, incidentally. But so I grew up in the care of an addict, and she's in a way a lovely woman. There's nothing, it's not her fault that she's broken. But my mission in my life is to arrest that, make sure that cycle stops, and that I pass not a whiff of it to my children, even positive ramifications of it. Like if I'm overly diligent or overly careful, I don't want that to necessarily impact the development of my children, even though it seems to be positive because it's grounded in that trauma. So I grew up in the addict, and you learn you're unworthy of love. At the end of the day, you know, the natural, organic human learnings that you have growing up, they become distorted. But you see them at the time as genuine learnings, and you fold them into your life and your identity and who you are. So yeah, I had this sort of, you know, I had a shotgun pointed at me when I was a teenager, you know, by a dealer. I've had, you know, traumatic experiences in there, but for the most part, we moved around a lot, you know. So I grew up with fork in the road ethics, and life wanted me to be a thief. Life wanted me to be a breaker and a taker because I was exposed to those kind of people. Yeah. And I think that influence is a really important theme in the big walk, you know, because hope works in the same way. It reaches out, influences people. But yes, I grew up in this contaminated environment. And when I was 15, it reached a point that I had to leave or die, you know, even if death, not suicide necessarily, but death can be in different forms. You can have like a spiritual dying, you know, or ethics can wither and die. And I felt the hopelessness of my situation impacting on me. And there were a few things that happened that, you know, they're pretty shady, pretty dodgy. Yeah. That if I told you the stories, it'd probably go into too much information and too graphic, you know. But there were some dark experiences, and it just came to a crunch, and I had to leave. And the thing is, the theme of when I left, I just slung a pack over my shoulder, sold everything I had. So I had $28 after selling my radio and my judo uniforms and everything I could, and I hit the road. Back at the time, you could buy a can of baked beans for 22 cents roundabout. So I had, you know, I was a month on the road, pretty much 28 days, I think, if I remember right. And it was an adventure. It took me from that dark place, and it started to just tease into me the idea that, well, hang on, Simon, the world isn't exactly what you've learned. You know, it wasn't the same or of the same magnitude, clarity, and purpose as my later big walk, which, you know, I'll get to. But it was this moment, this awakening, this lightening. So it set me up for my adulthood. But you don't overcome the lessons of a lifetime in a day, a week, or a month. I mean, you can, but it takes. And I say you can't, but I believe we are all capable of spontaneous remission of pain and sorrow. We are capable of just those little moments of elevation, of, you know, it's like the old Zen Buddhist stories, you know, and then in that moment, he was enlightened. Yep. Yeah. And it's, you can have those profound lessons, and they're available to us, but we don't necessarily have the diligence and the courage and the toolkit to seek them out and make the most of them. Yeah. So it takes, but for me, that moment was it had that theme of darkness to hope. So fast forward, I spent 10, 20 years pissing my life against the wall. You know, I always wanted to make forward momentum, but I was never living to my potential. You know what I mean? That for me is the sad learning of my life. Wasted years, you know, and probably everybody feels that way. You know, you've never just plowed through your life with absolute vigor, always doing the best in all situations. But I think that I was somewhat crippled by my childhood. I didn't believe that I was, you know, I didn't think that happiness was available to me. And if it were, I thought that there was something specially ugly and unworthy about me that meant, you know, other people get it, but never me. And so life wants you to become resentful, and it wants you to, you know, internalize those learnings. And I think that's, you know, I've met people who are broken, harshly broken, violent breakers and takers and all of that. And I think there's just these moments along the way where they were taken off the path. Like Dustin Hoffman had this lovely quote that, you know, he said, when I look at the junkie and the thief, I see the toddler that they were once upon a time. I wonder what went wrong.
Yeah.
You know? And I think we can remediate some of that, but we have to be accountable for our choices as well. Sorry, I've too, mate, by the way. But yeah, so there's this guy, 15 years old, he learned certain lessons. And then fast forward, I just organically at forks in the road made choices about my life, tried to learn who I was. And I only just recently realized you don't have to learn who you are, you can choose.
Yeah.
And those choices are what defines you. And if there's a spiritual meaning to our lives, whether that's not a religious thing, but it can be something, you know, if you're an atheist, you can still have spiritual meaning in your life, but it's something that you inject. It doesn't come from a higher power. It comes from a fertility in your own imagination and ethics. And you say, this is who I want to be and this is why, you know. But if there is a spiritual meaning to our life, it's our choices that define it and define whether we succeed or fail in pursuing it. And I slowly, over 20 years, you know, I got a job at horrible, boring, the insurance industry. It's one of the oldest industries in the world next to prostitution. And the parallel is there for a reason, you know. And that's where I spent 13 years of my life working there. So I wasn't worth anything else, right? And I did well because I'm smart. So I earned money. I made hay while the sun was shining. You know, I got a mortgage, bought the house, still owe money on the house, but I wasn't happy. And then I went on a quest for love. So I realized love is this fundamental thing that's missing. And that was where I started to move forward as a human being. So I fell in love. Again, though, adult love's transactional. You know, I'll love you as long as you don't poop your pants while you're laying in bed with me, or you know, you don't change the channel while I'm watching something, or you don't cheat on me or lie to me. But you know, I had 3 sons, you know, and that's where I learned absolute unconditional love. And that became like a massive motivation in my life. Maybe even the only fundamental one. Yeah. So the background, I got sick. I was 44 years old, muddling through my life as I had, because, you know, all that starting out of trauma, it has downsides, but it's made me very flexible in the way I think and the way I learn. I think I'm almost completely open-minded. I mean, I'm judgy as hell. I will judge you, but I will judge you in a way that I think is fair and unbiased. And it recognizes, like people say, oh, you know, you've got an open mind, but you're so judgy. Yeah, but people judge. It's what we do. We just like to pretend that we don't. The question is whether you do it fairly and honestly, you know. And we're not so honest these days. You know, we avoid topics, hard topics, because, you know, I would like to think, Karen, today, when I know I'm doing all the talking at the moment, but when we talk, the dialogue can just be straight up honest, because I value that more than I worry about hurting or offending people, because I know that honesty is the foundation from which it gets better for all of us. Yeah. If we're able to refine our honesty with our ethics and our compassion, you know what I mean? So you tell the truth, but you tell it with heart, and you know, you're sharing lessons as opposed to, you know, I can tell the truth. You're fat and ugly. I don't think you're fat and ugly. You know what I mean? I truth as a knife. Yeah. Or I can allow it to bloom. And, you know, that's, again, it's a defining choice that we make. But yeah, I got stage 4 cancer. It was a head and neck cancer. 6 months to live was my prognosis, but I had a 40 to 60% chance that chemoradiation would fix me. The treatment was horrible. I had a tube into my stomach to feed, which I was dependent on. It was surgically put into my tummy. I couldn't take anything by mouth for about 6 months. And even so, I'd feed myself into the tummy with this formula, and sometimes I'd vomit it up with like pain and blood. Wow. I've always been good with pain, though. The doctor, I went and saw my oncologist at one point, and he's like, look, how are you going with your morphine? And I'm like, you know, I had endone, I had these different medicines, I don't remember their names. And I'm like, I haven't filled the script yet. He's like, wait, what? And he like examines me, he looks at the inside of my mouth, you should be screaming in pain right now. And I'm like, no, I'm good with a bit of Panadol. It's all right. And I did end up taking the more serious pain medicine, but I think I've always sort of steered away from that sort of pain relief a little bit, because, you know, my mum was an addict, and what if there's that's in me? What if it's a DNA thing?
Yeah.
But yeah, I got through the treatment, but it broke my heart. And I didn't process. I hid it from my children, and I mitigated and diminished it with my wife. And I guess that meant that I couldn't properly process and grieve and feel what I was feeling and all of that. So, 4 years, when I beat it, it's like, yay, I beat it. But everything that I did became about the cancer, or even the positive stuff, So we took a holiday, not because it's wonderful to go out and take a holiday, but I beat cancer, so I should go out and take a holiday, even though I'm ambivalent about how I feel and my heart's a bit broken and I should do this and I should do that. And so cancer, I gave this tremendously inflated footprint in my life. Kind of, I feel we as a society have done the same thing with COVID. Yeah. We've given it a much larger shadow than it merits. Yeah. And for me, 4 years, I spent 4 years just trying to overcome that existential crisis. And it got to the point where a year before the big walk, I realized I was just waiting to die. So the treatments, the chemo radiation had wrecked my thyroid. That regulates your metabolism. I'd gained about 55 kilograms. So before Christmas of 2020, I weighed over 140 kilos. And I was walking home from school one day, and I just remembered that walk that I took as a child. And I hadn't thought about it in years, but I had this ripple, that feeling on the hairs on the back of your neck. And it's like God speaking to you, you know what I mean? I don't have a particular faith or anything, but it's a moment where you recognize a resonant truth. Yeah. And let's say whether truth is, whether there's an objective reality, a truth is individual, all of that stuff. For me, it was a resonant truth. And it was like this muscle memory of hope. So I thought, I began to believe in magic a little. I began to accept that if I did a quest, if I did a pilgrimage, I could recreate hope in my life. So the charity was much later, well, when I could have just sung a pack over my shoulders, no superhero stuff or anything, hit the road and walk. But and that night I started walking. I spent a week walking. I lost like 12, 14 kilos in the first month, I was just walking and thinking and reflecting and just starting to pick away at the processed feelings. Yeah. But I also started to think, this isn't enough. I really need to go. I need to do a big walk, and then bang, Captain Australia. Because I did create Captain Australia back in like 2006, 2007. Yeah. I got out. It was a shits and giggles thing as much as anything else. It was before I got married and in the early days of my marriage. And it was my way of combating that corporate malaise, I guess, that grayness that creep into day-to-day life. Your wheels are in the rut of the track, and that's all you can see in front of you. So it was my way of shaking that up, and also unconsciously saying, the world is darkening. The world is, we need individually to embrace ways to change that, to divert the trajectory we're on. Yeah. So it was just, but it wasn't. People thought that I was trying to fight crime. That's the way the public generally interpreted the idea of somebody saying the world is darkening and dressing up like that. But for me, and I didn't really know, and I didn't know how to articulate it, but for me, it was always about hope and kindness. Yeah. But I wasn't able to refine that until I got sick. And then I realized I needed to take a walk. And then I'm like, Captain Australia can come now. He can save me, and I can do it dressed as a superhero, and people will see that, and it'll be a spectacle. So I can help a charity. And as soon as I decided to be of service to a charity, amplified all of the healing element of it. Yeah. So I chose the Cancer Project, and that's the background to it anyway.
I love it. Well, you've been sitting there telling us the story in your Captain Australia outfit. And before I called it a Captain America outfit, and we had to cut it because I started cackling like a bloody chicken. But let's reveal Simon before we get on to the next bit.
Right. Well, when I got back from the walk, I shaved off the big bushy beard and cut the hair. So
There he is.
There he is. But the beard's just coming back. So I've been back for a couple of months. The big walk took me 84 days. And during the walk, I mean, I continued losing weight. I got this big, long, bushy beard. Yeah. And yeah, when I got home, people wanted to see what the person underneath looked like. So there's a fun. I never thought that I would ever be shaving my face to an audience. You know what I mean? Or cutting my own hair like someone too poor to go to the barber, you know, but for an audience. But yeah, here I am. This is me. Ta-da. So I am, and I am now, thanks so much. I am now more than I was, but I'm not sure who I am exactly. So I spent a few months, like at the start of the walk, I was Simon pretending to be a superhero, and I was processing grief. I was walking down the beach crying, you know. I was on my quest, and I was seeing the sunrise, and I was getting what I needed from those moments to heal myself. And somewhere in that walk, the identities of Simon and Captain Australia overlapped, and I was just me, you know. I just happened to be dressed like a buffet superhero. But the Simon that was, I left a lot of him on the beach. So I haven't quite figured out, you know, the before, during, the after is a bit jumbled. I'm still coloring in the, you know, and I'm getting bits outside of the lines, you know. I feel sloppy and lazy. I'm lounging around, my feet hurt all the time. You know, I've got all these old man grumbles. And Captain Australia wasn't about any of that, but maybe Future Simon is a little bit. You know, you need to have a whinge every so often. So I haven't figured out me 2.0, but I do have clarity around some of the things that I want to do with my life, I guess. So the big walk gave me that. But the biggest thing from the walk was learning how important it is, and it's like a mental health lesson, how important it is to feel what you feel and not hide from it. Not like, maybe my mother's addiction was her hiding from feelings. Yeah. You know what I mean? Maybe a lot of people with addiction, it's about medication to get pain. Yeah. Since I came back, they asked me to go and talk to this the Police Youth Club organization. They have these, it's like a re-education program or something for troubled teens who went off the rails a bit. And in this case, it was a group of girls, like about 20, I'll say, girls who were attending, and they do it for 6 months and they get a certificate at the end. And they asked me to come along and speak. So, and I was able to talk just authentically about a lot of that stuff, you know? And about how we don't, the fundamental for me is choice. We don't have to allow our past experiences to define our future choices. So I dress up like a superhero. I have no powers. I'm defined by my weaknesses. But if you're kind, I'm defined by how vigorously I try to rise above them. Yeah. And I think if you live a life where your choices are ethical, even if it's a train wreck, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You know, you look yourself in the eye and you say, I've always done my best. I've always been kind. I've always tried to be righteous. And so I've got all these little learnings that probably most people have wrapped into their life when they're 20. But
no, I don't think so.
I've only started picking them up in my 50s because of the big walk. Yeah. And it was this, you strip everything back, you unplug everything, all of the distractions from your day-to-day life, and you're out in nature. So I'd strongly advocate for anybody who's broken and struggling to, think about that. You know, think about just taking walkabout, like the old Indigenous thing. I don't want to culturally appropriate, but it's something that tribal cultures have been doing for millennia or centuries or whatever the right word is, you know, and it just gets the wild breathing. Yeah. Looking at the ocean.
100%. I think nature, I just went to a chuka on the weekend and did a video about that. You know, just get out in nature and start your day in nature. Start the day with fresh air, you know, because we are so, I don't know, I can't even think of the right word, but I feel like squashed, so squashed down by everything around us. When we get out in nature and in the openness, we can actually breathe, and we're like, oh, I'm not in a box, I'm not stuck in this little space. And
I think there's spiritual boxes too, Karen. Like we've got this, like when you were talking then, you were talking about being boxed in and your body language expanding out, right? If you look at the way that technology is woven into our lives, right? It's meant to expand us out. It's meant to connect us, but at the same time, it firmly, concretely locks in what we can and can't say, and how we tend to look, so that people will think, oh, he's happy and he's gorgeous, and and the disingenuous nature of it means that it kind of pulls you further away from any hope of finding your center. I think that this connectedness that we're supposed to have, but we don't have, we get this weird disparity. And I think when you're unhappy in your life, it's usually just that you got inner conflict of some kind. You know. I don't know if you can see that.
What is it? A mug with a superhero? No, it's a ghoul.
That's me. Yeah. I'll flip it. I'll check that out.
Oh, the big walk. Oh, that's fantastic.
There you go. Yeah.
You've got your own mug. You've gone up in the world.
Captainaustralia.online, you'll find links and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, the whole, I don't know, mate. Like your get off the bench thing. I don't know if I have any great lessons in terms of how it relates to other people, but the recipe for me was dressing up like a superhero and taking a big walk. And I think everybody has in them that magical solution, that one thing. And it might be pursuing a passion, becoming a circus clown, whatever it is, but it's that thing that gets them off the bench, you know?
Well, I think with Get Off the Bench, I started this as helping people to kickstart projects. But the more I go through the podcast, the more I want it to be about just don't sit there and let life shit on you. Just like be self-determined. Just get up. Get up and change the bloody channel. Get up and move. Get up and do something. Get off that bloody bench, because if you're sitting on the bench, you're just waiting. You're a sitting duck waiting for life to take you out. You are. Just get up, and it doesn't have to be anything. You don't have to walk from Brisbane to Melbourne. You don't have to save the world. You don't have to do anything like that. But just do something you love. Like just do something that makes you feel some joy, because if you feel joy, you extend that joy. Do you know? And when people are immersed in joy, the world becomes a better place. So at the end of the day, I mean, it started off as kickstarting projects. Now it's like, I just want people to feel like they have something to offer this world. And just by taking the smallest of actions, they can send out a ripple effect that it impacts so many other people, and the world can be a better place. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm wanting to achieve. But
the world too, mate, it's not all rainbows and puppy dogs and flowers. It wants to grind you down.
Yeah.
It wants you to fail. And it's not a deliberate, I don't think it's a purposeful evil, although it could be. It's just an accidental side effect of the way we build our societies, yeah? But for me, it wants to grind you down. And if let's say there were a Christ in the modern world, the world would have that guy just doing infomercials, using his charm to and he'd be so confused and batshit crazy by all of these impulses around him that's what he'd do, and it would be futile and pointless and ugly. But when you said if you pursue all of that yourself, you give other people a roadmap. You unconsciously grant them a path that they can follow. It's that ripple effect. So you and me, we might make a dazzling new recipe for a certain type of pizza or whatever, but somewhere out there there's a Gandhi, or there's some wonderful, beautifully gifted painter who can move the world with their art, who is locked into playing Roblox or whatever they're doing, because they don't see that permission to shine. So I think the ripple effect is profoundly important. It's the way we turn everything around as a species, I reckon.
I 100%. I agree with that. And that's why I keep at it. But speaking of pathways, because you just said, let's create pathways. Your pathway, Brisbane to Melbourne. Why did you choose Brisbane to Melbourne? Like, what's the significance in that?
It's a big bloody walk.
A very big bloody walk.
When I was a kid, like I was in Brisbane and my grandmother lived in Sydney. I didn't get all the way there. I got to a town called Gloucester, which is about 100 kilometres out of Sydney. I had like 50 cents left. My shoes had fallen to pieces and I just had these horrible blisters on my feet. And I realised I'm a little bit rooted. And I just used that 50 cents to call my grandma. And she bullied the local station master into giving me a ticket. This was before credit cards and all of that sort of stuff. So she promised to send a traveller's check or whatever. And she was a force of nature. But she got me on a train, got me the rest of the way there. And I lived happily there for a couple of years. And yeah, I learned that my grandfather had habitually used his fists on her. But that getting there, I sort of created this peace between them in her final years. So she died just a couple of years later from bladder cancer, and it was a long, horrible death. And I used to just wag school every day and go and sit with her in the hospital. I don't think anybody in the family knew that at the time. And it's probably one of the things that I'm happiest that I've done in my life, being able to bring that ease into her last years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had walked from Brisbane to Sydney more or less. And I think at first I thought, oh, well, I'll do that again. I'll walk from Brisbane to Sydney. But then I thought, hang on, I was a boy then. Now I'm a man. Let's walk Brisbane to Melbourne. It's a big bloody walk. And the math of it was about right. I got to the end. I've done a bit of damage to myself, but it could be worse. And it was long enough that the ordeal, like if you just have an ordeal for a week, yeah, you have an ordeal and you'll learn some stuff from it. But you get to this barrier where you push through, and then you're like, I have to keep pushing through. And eventually you reach a point where that is your life.
Yeah.
It's no longer an ordeal. And you learn that suffering is something that you can bear, and it's and you will get to the end.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So you fold certain insights about past lessons in your life that you learned wrong. Like for me, I met kindness at every turn, So that people are breakers and takers and purely selfish and all of that, it was wrong. It wasn't true. So I was able to fold that new reality into my life going forward.
Yeah.
And what I learned was, even if that is false, I would prefer to live in that world and be wrong than live in the dark world. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that then says to me ethically, give everybody that initial platform. Let them, so trust. Let them betray your trust rather than walk around in life not trusting. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
I would prefer to live in that world than not. And, then the 1 in 100 will come along and steal your car or whatever. So you work around that, move forward, but don't let that darken your outlook towards the 99. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that is so true. Isn't it? I always say that too when I'm training people, is just love the person sitting next to you, and just invest in love, because, and yes, they might shit on you, but that's their karma, not yours. You might as well live in a world where you hope. I think it's the hope. You just hope that everybody. I don't believe that everybody's going to be great, but I kind of hope that they are, and I always put that hope first. That I meet people at that place where I'm hoping that they're going to be kind and they're going to be nice. But I love it. When you said before. We started to get to it before, and I know this because I know your story, that before you took on the walk, you had sunk into such a deep depression, that, that you felt like you were dying. You felt like it was killing you. There are going to be people listening to this or people who know people listening who know other people who are in a point of depression where they feel they can't dig themselves out. They just maybe they're not at a point where they want to take their life or, or finish everything, but they just feel like every day nothing's ever going to get better because they've lost hope. How did you, what was the thing that just, I know you said you walked on the beach and you went for walks and that kind of stuff, but what was the thing that made you say, I'm not sitting in this place anymore? I just sick to death of this place.
The depression for me is a bit like cancer. It's an insidious disease. It's not like getting hit by a bus, where you can get hit by a bus and it can kill you or you permanently. When you get hit by a bus, you either die or you deal with it and move forward. You may have to even roll around in a wheelchair, but you're not going to spend the rest of your days worrying about getting hit by a bus again, probably, because the odds are horribly low. But with depression, it colors the remainder of your days in front of you for however far forward you can see. So you'll look into your life and it'll just be, I don't know, sterile and uninviting. There's no magic, no joy, bereft of dignity and hope. And I think hope is absolutely the fuel for change.
Yeah.
So believing that a positive outcome is available to you.
Yeah.
And generating that belief isn't something, you can do all this false self-help, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think that that's something that you can necessarily teach somebody. Like there's a particular recipe for creating hope. What there is a role model, an example, a roadmap. Yeah. So I took my broken life, profoundly broken, found a recipe that was unique to me and spontaneously healed. Cancer is behind me now. Those feelings are behind me now. My mood is consistently, so my baseline might have been a 3 out of 10 before. Now it's a 6 or a 7. So I'm much better at navigating the highs and the lows. The lowest I'll go is like a 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Higher. Yeah. And the thing is, the hope that positive change is available is fundamentally necessary. Otherwise, you do it for a day, a week, or a month, and then you go back to the old ways. Permanent change requires hope. Hope is the fuel. And I think kindness is the engine. It's the antidote to sorrow. It helps you because you connect to other people and you become of use. But again, it's going to differ for different people. But what I think is one of the valuable things about my big walk is that it concretely demonstrates that it's possible. So if you have no hope, for me, the hope of taking a walk that would heal me, that's where it started with me. But if you have no hope, you don't have to take a walk. You don't have to sit on the beach. Some of these things won't work for you, right? We don't know what's going to work for you. But if you can go, oh yeah, that Buffett did it. He's just a high functioning moron. And look at him. He did it. He completely turned it around. And that's why it's incumbent on me to not just show the walk too. People have asked me to stay in touch. So I do. Every now and then I stream up and I say, I'm actually all good. I'm as a hot mess as I ever was, but I'm all good, So I've overcome the clause that cancer sinks into your life. Like it becomes a perpetual storm on your horizon. You spend so much of your time and energy because of cancer. You're either worrying about it or defying it, or working to overcome the implications of it or whatever. I'm completely done with that. The only time I do things because of cancer now is to help other people. People through treatment, or my little mate Archer, who's in Westmead Hospital. We have these video calls from time to time. And I love that I can get him to smile because he's over it. He's been in hospital for 3 months now. And he's struggling, just a little boy. Yeah. But that hope, it's going to look different for all of us. But when you see, okay, there's a map, can try that one. But when I try it and fail, I learn, try again, and succeed. Like for me, failure is only a failure when you allow it to remain so. Otherwise, it's a lesson, And the idea of hope means that you will succeed. And it has to be that adamant. You will succeed. It's like Wendy and Peter Pan. You can only fly when you believe in the magic. And hope like that. It has to be 100% investment. It has to be like, yeah, I'm in it, and that's it. And the thing is, the world absent it, there's no benefit to it. So even if you're self-deluding a little bit at first, but genuinely trying to navigate towards it, if you eventually click, like any momentum towards hope is a good thing. So even when you're not quite there, then you commit some, like you find fractionally something to do. So for me, like obesity is a side effect of sadness, sorrow, depression. Yeah. So people have written in and say, how did you lose so much weight? And I'm like, well, and then translating that back to hope, because it's not about, eat less and exercise. That's obvious. It's about having hope. And if you can't say, look, if you're 60 kilos overweight, that's like a year or two undertaking to solve it in a sane way. You can do it quick, not sane. And to have that sustained hope, if you can't quite get bloom, you can at least say, look, I believe in this enough to commit a week. And after that week succeeds, I can do it. I'm capable. And then you start to navigate towards your internal truths and that recipe that is unique to you. But you've got that little spark of hope, and you have to protect it and breathe life into it and preserve it. And as it grows, you're able to start sharing it. And the loss is one of the most devastating things, So for me, it's something absolutely, for sound mental health, you be protective of your sense of hope and personal momentum. That's my takeaway from the walk anyway. And the benefit of the walk is that I can, even if there's just one person out there, you, who hears it and goes, okay, I can do this too. All worthwhile. The subsequent suffering, the walk itself, all worthwhile.
I love it. I believe in that. I'm a real big thing. A lot of people said to me, you're so resilient. You've been kicked in the guts that many times. You keep getting up, you're resilient. Why? And I just used to think, well, I'm just resilient. That's just who I am. But the more I've looked at this lately, and it's exactly what you're saying, is I believe underlying resilience is optimism. And it's that exactly what you're saying, that hope that there's a better tomorrow. There's that hope, or that even that belief, that there's something around the corner that is better. And I really reckon that's getting back up again, and getting up. Resilience is all about the belief that there's something better around the corner, or that there could be something better around the corner, which falls right into the hope that you're talking about.
Yeah, well, for me, the thing is, there's power. There's power in me. Absolutely there is. And I think there's power in you as well. Yep. And much anybody out there. So human beings can do remarkable things.
Yep.
But in order to access that strength, you need hope. You need to believe, right? So if your life has crushed you into believing the most you deserve is this, and the best you can achieve is that, and you've completely internalized that, then you will never access any kind of meaningful power. And you start to change that lesson and say, look, I get it. I have beauty in me. One of the kindest gifts out of the big walk is I was able to fall in love with myself.
Yay!
The first time in my life,
Wow.
I look at myself and go, you're beautiful, mate. I love you, and that's a new experience. But that having hope in that possibility allows you to access power that is in there. It's already in there. We are human. We are strong. We can be united. We can lift each other up, and lifting each other up is that benefit, that ripple effect of becoming strong.
I love that.
Inspire each other. Yeah. But if you have no hope, you can't see it, you can't access it, and that's what life wants. So you say, life, I'm going to be me, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, I love it. And on the walk, you talk about inspiring people. You did this for the Kids Cancer Project. Well, you didn't do it for that. I'm going to cough. Hang on. Excuse me. I'm going to snap. So you did it for the. So you did it for the Kids Cancer Project, and although you didn't decide to do that, like that sort of came later, but tell us about the Kids Cancer Project and what it's about, what it means to you.
So when I realized if I was going to do it, I could do it theatrically, I could be of service.
Yep.
I need to think about what charity I committed to. So it started just with the idea that if I do an insane walk, something that a man of my age and state of health and, my situation just wouldn't do, then that innately has there's a dimension of public interest to it. And then I do it dressed up as the bullfed superhero, Captain Australia. Bang, let's strap a rocket onto that. And so the idea then that I could do something meaningful, something that has, an achievable cynical result, like raise a chunk of money, do this, do that, then I needed to figure out where the most merit was. So I looked at a lot of charities. I looked at like mental health charities. For me, there's like homelessness and all the rest. They're charities that solve the symptoms, not the problem. So you can home the homeless, but until you solve, like for a lot of people, homeless might be just a practical outcome, like COVID, can't work, can't pay the mortgage, I'm on the street, and that's a preventable, and you can help someone, you can give them a home. But a lot of the people that I met on the road, they were self-medicating through health issues, or there was strife and pain and underlying pathology that caused the problem. So giving them a house, it'll be trashed in a month, and then that doesn't solve the core problem. So mental health, I looked at that and I thought, well, yeah, that's wonderful. But then I also thought, like, real mental health, you can go to therapy for 30 years. I believe that real mental health outcomes come from like long, hard, honest looks inside yourself, and they're purely internal. Like I believe that none of us can prove that we actually exist. So objective reality is a slippery idea. So truth is internal to you. Yep. Absolute truth can only be internal to you. And given that, people can guide you, not teach you. They can lead you to understandings that are already in here, locked away somewhere. Navigate to them yourself. So for me, therapy and all of that, I'm not saying it's absolutely valueless and bullshit. It's there to guide you, not fix you. You have to fix yourself. Yep. That's the way I see a lot of that sort of mental health stuff anyway. Fair, unfair, true, untrue. That's the way I see it. So I thought about charities that look at the root cause of the problem. I thought about the science behind cancer, and I thought, no, it's too motivated. I had cancer, now I'm going to march against cancer. But I don't like the way like a celebrity will support diabetes because their nana has diabetes or whatever. It's innately selfish. And then I thought, pediatric cancer. I love children. I think children are the light that life tries to snuff out. I am more childlike now than I have ever been in life, because I had to become old too soon. Yeah. So the idea of being childlike is wonderful and important, not shameful and embarrassing. Right. The idea of pediatric cancer, that no child should have to endure the things that I did. Bang. Done. That's it. It makes sense. So then I looked at the charities that do it. And the Kids Cancer Project had a lot of intelligence that I've read and absorbed. Like, they looked at the research that they do. There's 950 Aussie children impacted every year, give or take. Yeah. Wow. So of the children that are these are just diagnoses every year, 950. And of the children diagnosed, 20% of them will outright die. They won't survive treatment. So that's 3. And this is not the global numbers. These are just domestic numbers. So here in Australia, 3 children every week will perish, die horrible deaths. The parents, the families, whatever. In some cases, the family situation may not be beautiful. It's compromised and all the rest. But for the most part, the loss of a child is such a crippling and horrible pain. Mm-hmm. So there's parents that, the impact is more than just the loss of a life. It's the destruction of a family. Mm-hmm. And I met people on the road who had 20 years later carried that special kind of grief, Mm-hmm. So I thought about charities that try to help soften treatment. You've got things like Make-A-Wish, Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Doesn't solve the problem. It just gives some trivial, like a thing, into those final hours of life. I'm not saying I shouldn't have used the word trivial. It's beautiful, but yeah, let's go back to the roots of the tree, you know.
Yeah.
Ronald McDonald House, there are all these charities out there about helping house and whatnot. For me, the research was fundamental. You know, it's about making sure, and for me, as I walked, it's that idea of saving even just one life. And there's the old Hebrew proverb that I've quoted so many times, that if you save but one life, you save the world entire. Yeah. So I'm walking and I'm like, you save just one kid, you know, just one kid. But the thing about the research is, as it improves, it becomes a new normal. So the 950 next year becomes 949. Yeah. So that for me, that's why. And it wasn't until much later that I realized, when I was walking, I'm like, I had that in my mind. Quite often I'd be thinking, you know, if it just saves one life, it makes it all worthwhile. It makes my own cancer worthwhile. All of the suffering subsequent worthwhile. The pain of the walk, the ordeal of the walk itself worthwhile. If I can just save one life. But then much later that I realized I already had.
Yeah.
I'd saved my own.
Yeah.
You know? And there's inspiration in that. Like this little kid, Archer, is inspired by it. And I love it, you know, and it goes back to hope. So supporting the charity, it's about raising money. Money is symbolic of value. I think time is the only currency that matters, really, because it's forever.
Yeah.
We have to be mindful with how we spend it. Yeah. But yeah, raising money, research, 164,000 and counting. Charity page is still open. And the director of the Kids Cancer Project at the end said to me, on average, our research projects are around 150 grand. So, you know, your walk has funded one significant research undertaking in relation to pediatric cancer. So I can live with that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. What did you end up raising?
So it's still counting, but it's 164,800 something.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The initial stated goal was $250,000. So technically it's a failure, you know, but the I came up with $250,000 because they wouldn't let me say $1 million. So let's raise $1 million for the charity. And they're like, that's completely insane. And I'm like, okay, $500,000. That's completely insane. An average fundraiser is $4,000, Simon. And I'm like, $250,000. They're like, all right, look, we'll call it $250,000, but don't get your hopes up, you know. But we gave it a good shot, and I think it was a significant outcome. But the thing is, it was of benefit for more than just the monetary result.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of kids, because you're saying that kids shine a lot and everything, and I'm so happy that you've raised that much money. And I agree with you. I love your philosophy, and I hope you're right. You know, that about the new norm, and then, you know, it comes down each year and it comes down each year, and I can absolutely see you trudging along that road, going, just save one life, just save one life, just one life saved.
Yep.
And I
absolutely did, 100%. I absolutely did. I was like chanting it, just one life. Just one life, like the little engine that could, trying to keep my own.
I love it. And well, you obviously, like you're saying before, kids are just beautiful. They're just the shining light and everything else. Now you've got 3 kids, and I know that part of this walk was to leave a legacy, you know, for your kids, that if their cancer ever did come back, they would see what their dad did, and, you know, they'd be reminded. What do your kids? Let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's sort of throw that out off the table. But what happened when you got back? Like, tell me what your kids think about this walk and how it's changed your relationship or built your relationship, or what's happened.
Well, parenting's a long game. Yeah. So a lot of that remains to be seen. I've been home for a couple of months and I've been in a state of slothful collapse. Yeah. So we went and saw Dr. Strange yesterday, you know, so I'm trying to go back to being the active parent that I was, but I'm also like, I am changed. So I have 3 little boys. When I was first diagnosed, my youngest son was 3. So that's one of the crippling dimensions, that like why cancer was so profoundly hurtful. The ramifications of it were so destructive for me, because I had to face the idea that this little 3-year-old kid would be subjected to grief. Yeah, be raised without me. And good, bad, or indifferent, I do inject, like, the path of their lives with me in it is better than the path of their lives with me absent, because I'm a good dad, but I want to be a great dad. I want to be the best dad. I want to piss on all you other dads out there, and I got the t-shirt. I'm the best. I want to be champion dad, and I guess it remains to be seen whether I achieve that. But the big walk has allowed me to crystallize those goals. In terms of the way it impacted their life, like they had their mum full on single parenting them for a few months, and but my local community knew all about the walk. Even before I left, I'd been walking around doing these practice walks from like Ipswich, Redcliffe, like these places around Brisbane that are about 40 to 60k away, so I could do test my endurance, test the gear, also get out with the costume on and kind of pre-promote it a bit. And so as I was walking, when I'd get on the telly or whatever, the kids became little rock stars in the school. And now, even though I'm all sloppo, I'll be walking through the school in the afternoon and kids will go, "G'day, Captain Australia." And me, and I'm like, "G'day, mate." And I loved stopping at schools on the way down. I do love the idea that even ignoring that inspiration level, just the basic, dressed up like this sort of thing, if that injects a little bit of completely unanticipated fun or strange into a child's life, if it gives them just this moment of memory where they'll look back when they're like 30 and they go, "I remember that dickhead. What was wrong with that dickhead?" And then they take, "Holy crap." And then maybe it leads to inspiration. But even just giving a child that memory is great, And I had, like, on the way down, I stopped at a school at Narooma, Mogo, New Morella. There were a few schools where they invited me in to speak. And I mean, Narooma was great. They had the whole school in the assembly hall there. So there was like a couple of thousand kids all lined up. And it was the preppies up the front. And I'm like answering questions. I think I did a great job too. I randomly made them giggle, like I do a little bit of a rap or something. And I unrehearsed, unscripted, and I'd been walking all day to get there. But like down the back, there was this teenager who asks a question and I can't quite hear. So I purposefully answered a different question. So I'm like, she'd go, "Have you injured yourself while you're walking or whatever?" And I'd go, "Well, if I had to choose, I'd say Ernie is much better than Bert. Like, he's sweet and kind and Bert's the nasty one." Everyone's like, "What the hell?" And then they burst out laughing. Questions that weren't even asked. But the kids in the front were like, and I'm like, "Yes, mate, you." And I point the mic at them and he's like, "I forgot." Or then, "What's your question, mate?" And he's like, "Captain Australia, how heavy is your pack?" Or there'll be a little girl, "Hey, what about you, sweetheart?" "My dad knows about snakes." "That's not a question, but good on you." It's great. I loved it. And there's a little element of that here in my home suburb. I'm sort of recognised now a little bit, even when I'm walking around just as dodgy old Simon. And there's, I have to be careful about that. I don't want to be spitting on the side of the road or anything, because they're like, "Captain Australia, dirty bastard."
Yeah. I love it. So where to now? What are you, I know you're saying before you're trying to align your past, present, future, but what do you hope might come next?
So for me, the goal has been to fold as many of the things that I've learned back into my life. So I said towards the end of the walk, I was being interviewed and I said, "I am stronger now in every way that strength matters." And for me, the goal has been to make sure that A, that's true, and B, if it is, that I don't allow it to wither away, that I don't fall in who I was.
Yeah.
So, that reconciliation between who I was, who I became in the walk, and me today, I'm muddling through. Realized I've been a little bit stressed out, but I've realized it doesn't matter. What matters are the core learnings, values, the core values that I've learned. And for me, outside of that, it's just having a goal. So I've been thinking, like, what next for Captain Australia, to answer your question. And I don't know, maybe I hang the hood up, maybe I give it to somebody else, or maybe there's something yet to be done. I don't think I'm done with suffering. I think I think there's more adventure in me, you know. I had a mate who flies light planes. He's short taking and land off, short land off and short, what short takeoff and landing. They are stalled, I think they're called. And you can land them on top of a mountain or on the beach. Said, come on, we're going to go up flying. Normally I'm terrified of heights and drunken pilots as well. So I would have said no, but I'm like, yeah, let's go. The idea of him flying me in the middle of the bush somewhere and me making my way back is exciting. And I just like some of these little adventures, and I love the idea that people take something from them. So, you know, there's just, what will I do next? I don't bloody know. In the short term, it's just about trying to get that level of clarity. And I mean, the main things that matter to me are I do want to do something good with the days that remain to me. I want to be righteous and I want to be true in a world that I think those principles are eroding. I think people are mostly full of shit, to be honest. Like, even though they're lovely, and it's not purposeful, it's because they don't know, you know. So you're living in a life where all around you is farce and fabrication, every, you know. And so it makes you that, you know. That's not who I want to be at all going forward. So I want righteousness, I want truth, and I want to do good. I want to help somehow. Yeah. And it's those core principles. Yeah. So right now I'm doing a keep it 100 thing, where for the next 100 days, my focus is just my personal health, because I can't let my weight creep back up over 100 kilos. Yeah. And keep 100, it's a hip hop phrase. Yo, yo, yo. It's about keeping it real, it means, yeah? I've got a hip hop for you. Why does Snoop Dogg always carry an umbrella?
I've got no idea.
Bo drizzle, ma shizzle. Never mind, you'd have to know Snoop Dogg.
I don't know Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, it's Bo drizzle. But I'm keeping it 100. So 100 minutes of healthy activity every day. Keep my weight below 100. Do that consistently for 100 days. I'm maybe keeping it 68, to be honest. Yeah. And I'm trying to navigate. I'm trying, you know, even though I did this thing that is in a way a monumental thing, it's a big thing, but it has changed me. I haven't suddenly got the, oh yeah, ooh, he's leveled up, you know? So I'm figuring it out. But for me, the fun thing is, don't get too caught up in that. You get to choose. So it's all about alignment. And if you stay aligned, doing the best you can.
Oh, well, I love it. Well, it doesn't matter what you choose to do or where you end up being. If you've got those principles, I think you're going to bloody continue to change lives and continue to make the world a better place. And at the end of the day, that's what counts. So I've absolutely loved this conversation. And I reckon you just mentioned before it sounded like you had a website. We were talking about this 8 months ago, and I think you were going to get a website. So is it?
Oh, yeah, I've created it. I'm right now, what I'm doing, this is also, in addition to keep it 100, I'm retelling the walk. So I took all these streams and photos, and I tried to like answer people's questions there on the side of the road, sitting to a snake or whatever. But I did an inherently bad job, because I'm not a social media star, and it wasn't cynical, it wasn't contrived. So I didn't have a script or a playbook. I was just trying to share it. Like you said, to create that living diary for my children was the first motivation, although it was morbid. If cancer came back for me, they would know who I was and what mattered. But I think the fact that it was true, and it was always trying to be true, resonated for some people. But it had truth but not clarity. So I'm going back. I've done the first 4 days. So I'm retelling it, compiling the streams into one video, adding comments and insights here and there, and just journaling it. So it's captainaustralia.online if you want to take a look. And it's got like individual. So I've got this page where it's like got little snippets of every day, and right now it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, but at the end it'll be all of them. And you can see as I go back and like recompile, there's stuff that I missed. Like when I crossed the New South Wales border, there's this sort of monument there, and there's a line that says you're on Queensland this side, New South Wales that side. And there was a lady having a little picnic on the line that when I'm so focused on, here I am, New South Wales, I claim this land as my own, and blah, 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 making my pronouncements and crossing the border. And I'd been spending 4 days to get there. So I didn't really notice her. But she, in the background, is like photo bombing and laughing. And I did. So as I go through and recompile, there's all these little things that I missed. And I'm also just able to kind of share my own insights now looking back. But yeah, that you get to concretely sort of see that change too. So at the start, when I was kind of play acting and hoping and just sort of muddling through, and that you can kind of see this transition. And I'm looking forward to when I got to Ballina, like the weeks 2 and 3. It became more about the people that I was meeting. There was a long period where it was about the ordeal, but then we started to see kindness, started to see hospitality and other people's stories. So I'm looking forward to getting to some of that stuff and breaking it down.
Oh, that's awesome. So people can go and look at captainaustralia.online. And what about Facebook and Instagram? Where can they find you there?
I used Facebook as the main vehicle for streaming and stuff. So all of that's there in the timeline as well. It's Cap's Big Walk, if anybody wants to suss that out. And I do still occasionally stream up and stay in touch and whatnot. Use Instagram, too old. And I've got a bunch of videos and stuff on YouTube because that's the way I put it on the website. You know, it's got those embedded on your website sort of tricks. So I'm not a web person, and it's all horribly amateurish, but I'm still my best with the tools that I have.
Doesn't matter. It's a way of watching what you're doing, and it's a way of connecting with you as well. So I'm going to put all of those in the show notes, all those links, so people can go and see them and connect with you as well if they want to. And I hope they do, because I love you. You know, as I said, you know, we've formed a friendship, and I just think you're bloody brilliant, you know. And I know, you know, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. You know, you talk about honestly struggling and you're still battling your way through working out who you are. And I love that, because that's real. You know, I don't want it. You get people who are like, oh yeah, I've solved all the fucking problems in the world and this is who I am. And that's not real. What you're talking about, what you're talking about is real. And it's like, I still don't know. This is just a journey. This is one more chapter in my life, and let's see where we go. So I love that about you. Absolutely love it.
I think as I've walked, people have reflected back at me things about myself that at first I couldn't receive. So in the first 4 days or so that I've done on this journal, whenever somebody would compliment me, you can see it in my face. I'm like, that's very nice of you to say, but that's not true, you know, shut up. You know, I got better as I started to fall in love with myself. I got better at receiving that kind feedback as well. But for me, like what you just said, it's fundamental. The idea that the truer your depiction of who you are, as unordered warts and all that you offer, if you do something of merit and you earn regard, you have really earned it, because it's you. It's not some bullshit. Even though I'm wearing a mask, it's me. You know what I mean? It's I'm not trying to fake it, and that authenticity then gives other people this sort of, okay, it's okay to be confused. It's okay to feel alone or even destructive or whatever. What it's about is the choice and how I respond to that and how I move forward. And it also demonstrates that you should diligently try and do that in your life, all your life. The more cemented you are in your viewpoints, the more dangerous you are. You know what I mean? All your life, you're looking at who you are and who you want to be, refining it and honing it. So you got these people who are like, I'm champion and I'm whatever. You're bloody dangerous, mate. You know, like just pull your thumb out and or your head out or whatever the saying is, and by doing that, we kind of say that it's okay to do that. And I mean, it's right back at you anyway. Thank you for your kind words, and the get off the bench thing, I loved it from the moment you told me about it. You know, so. And it is, that's what life needs to be. I mean, in a way, the big walk is metaphorical to it, you know. It's get up, move forward. Like, you have to find ways. Doesn't matter how much life grinds you down, as it does. You know, it's not about that. Suffering can illuminate future joy. It can grind you down. It can knock you over, and you can spend your life focusing on how unfair it is and how wrong it is. Well, you can get the fuck up and move forward.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's
Sorry.
that's fine. But that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it is about choice, and we forget that we've got choice. And once we recognize and really understand that we do have choice, and people say they're stuck, but there's always a next step. There's always another choice to make. So, well, I have absolutely loved this. I hope that people go follow you, and and yes, it's over, but you're still, you're not over. Your energy is still in it. Your energy is still sitting there. You're still streaming. You're still, they can go back and be inspired by it. But I can't wait to see what's next. And it doesn't have to be anything great.
As I walk the dog or as I go about my day-to-day life, there's something aching in me to be out on the road, so if at some point some fabulously wealthy individual or organization sponsored it, I would circumnavigate Australia on foot. Captain Australia lap, go everywhere. It would take a year, but that there's something for being out there in it. It's kind of like people who come back from Vietnam or whatever, the war, and they're like, part of me always stayed there. I feel as there's still a little bit of me still on the road, and that sort of itinerance, if that's a word, I kind of appreciate that adventure. So I'm not done with that, I don't think. I just don't know. Not yet.
But anyway, I love that you're saying that. I just don't know yet. And I wish more people would just say that. I just don't know yet. But anyway, I have loved this. So thank you so much. And we'll stay in touch. And this episode will drop in a few weeks. And I just can't wait to share it with everybody. So thank you.
All the best. Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. You take care of yourself.
I will. You too. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Ta-ra.